First of all, thanks very much to all of you for coming out tonight. Politics is a serious business and never more serious than it is these days. Let me just tell you a few things about me. I grew up in Needham. I'm actually the product of a mixed marriage. My mom's a Democrat, my dad's a Republican. And I grew up listening to the checks and balances that you were talking about across the kitchen table in my house the whole time I was a kid. And I always believed that it was good to have two voices represented, and I grew up watching that play out all the time. And my mom made my dad work harder, and my dad made my mom work harder when they talked politics. And I actually felt like I had a chance to see that play out in real terms when I worked in state government during the Weldon-Cellucci administrations in the 1990s. We walked into a very big budget deficit, very high rate of unemployment, a lot of unhappiness with one-party rule, the end of the mass miracle. And by the time I left state government several years later, after serving in that administration, unemployment had dropped by 6 points. We'd cut taxes. We created a lot of new jobs in the private sector, and people felt like things in Massachusetts were mostly working. And that had a lot to do with why I decided to leave Harvard Pilgrim, which was a great place to work, where I had a great group of people that I'd worked with over the course of the past decade, and jump into this race. Because I did have some idea about what it looked like when you did have checks and balances and when government was working, and I really don't feel like we have that now. We're spending too much money. We're not disciplined about how we're spending money. And it almost feels to me like there's two sets of rules. You know, as I've been out visiting families and businesses and cities and towns as well, everybody's been tightening their belts. They're figuring out how to live with less. In some cases it's 5% less, in some cases it's 10, and others it's 20 or 30 or 40. But I don't see state government playing by that same set of rules that everybody else is playing by. And state government needs to play by those rules, because until state government starts to play by the same rules everybody else plays, it's going to be hard to get people back to work. One of the biggest ways you get people back to work is you get people to invest. You get them to invest with their heart and with their wallets and with their heads. And if people don't know what's going to happen on Beacon Hill next, except that it's probably going to be bad, the likelihood that they will make the big decision to invest in hiring one more person, or putting one more person back to work, or making a decision to expand their business just isn't going to happen. And I think this is a great state. It's full of unbelievably smart and interesting people. I've lived here my whole life, minus those 2 years I spent in Chicago, which is also a great place. And I'm really worried about where our future is going. We haven't created any net new jobs in this state in almost 10 years. We have very high cost of almost everything. Makes it very hard for people to live here, makes it hard for businesses to invest here, and it makes it hard for us to grow here. And those three kids that you mentioned, they're 19, 16, and 12. I want them, when they plant their flag in the ground and make their decision about where they're going to make their life, I want them to make their life here in Massachusetts the same way my brothers and I did, and the same way my parents did. But if we don't create an affordable, responsible, and accountable state government, one that works for the people of Massachusetts instead of the other way around, and one that's committed every single day to fighting and competing for every single job that's available to people in Massachusetts, then when that time comes and my kids have to make that big decision, they'll end up going somewhere else. South, probably, but maybe north. Let me just say one final thing. When I've talked to people on Beacon Hill about my worries about the economy and jobs and everything else, they always say people leave because of the weather. But then I remind them that a lot of those people left and went to New Hampshire. It wasn't about the weather, folks. It was about the climate. I'm about cutting taxes, getting people back to work, shrinking the size of state government, and creating an accountable and affordable state government that works for you. Because at the end of the day, you pay the bills. That's the way it should work. And if I am fortunate enough to elect it, I promise you, you'll get 150% of what I bring to the table every single day, and every single person who works for me. And as a guy who's been part of two turnarounds, one in the public sector, one in the private sector, I know what this is about, and I will deliver that for you, the people of Massachusetts. Thanks very much.